you're just going to get your little say that that's okay, that we're recording you. For anyone that does need closed captioning, it is at the bottom of your screen. You'll see the little CC live transcript. So you click on that and you can get the closed captioning there. I have muted everybody other than the speakers, and that's just to kind of cut down on any background noise that we may have coming on. Now, as the speakers are speaking, I invite you to put any questions you've got in the chat. But each session, so we have 3 different sessions, we'll have a Q&A open dialogue session at the end. So we will be able to hopefully get all questions and discussion answered and recorded. I will make sure that if we don't have time for questions that you've put in the chat, then we certainly will get those answered and sent out after the summit. But I anticipate we should have lots of time for Q&A at the end of each session. So just to get us started, I will start with a land acknowledgement. So we want to recognize that individually and collectively, our work takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across Ontario. And we begin by acknowledging that although we are meeting virtually, we are all on land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples for thousands of years. We acknowledge that this land is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island and express gratitude for the traditional caretakers of this land. For those of you who are not in this territory, we honor the land where you may be. I am located in Brantford, Ontario, located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and directly adjacent to the Haldimand Treaty territory. So just I want to acknowledge also that this is Accessibility Solutions event to honor National Accessibility Week. And this year's theme for National Accessibility Week in Canada is inclusion from the start. And I think that those of us that work in this space really want to recognize that it's a very timely theme. One of the things that I run into in the work that I do is that it's much cheaper, it's much more effective to build accessibility in than bolt it on later. And so if we all had that thought process, that inclusion from the start of anything, whether it be a physical project or a program or just anything that we're working on, that inclusion is built into to everything that we're doing. So National Accessibility Week celebrates the valuable contributions and leadership of Canadians with disabilities, highlights the work of individuals, organizations and communities who are removing barriers, and reflects on our ongoing efforts to become a better, more accessible and more inclusive country. The summit is sponsored and put on by Accessibility Solutions. So my name is Linda Hunt. I am the CEO of Accessibility Solutions. But Accessibility Solutions is an accessibility consulting firm that aids businesses, organizations, and individuals to remedy barriers for people with disabilities. Everything we do is focused on our mission of making the world accessible. We work closely with businesses to develop innovative accessibility solutions customized to meet their needs. We provide expertise, products, education, and reliability that you require to provide equal access and reasonable accommodations in all areas of your business. When you provide an accessible environment, you are welcoming everyone. Accessibility Solutions brings both the expertise and lived experience to projects that focus on the importance of inclusion for everyone. So that's my little kickoff, honoring National Accessibility Awareness Week. I do want to let everyone know that we are recording this session primarily because the discussions, the question and answers, and the presentations today will help us format our Accessibility Expo, which is being held September 13th to 15th. So that's a 3-day expo happening the second week in September. And we're really hoping that our discussions today will be able to give us some feedback in terms of topics and questions, issues that that both organizations and persons with lived experience want to see us kind of tackle head on at that Accessibility Expo. So without further ado, we're going to get started on our first speaker. So I'm pleased to introduce Kate Chung, and Kate is the co-chair of the Accessible Housing Network. The Accessible Housing Network is a collaboration of nonprofit Canadian organizations advocating in support of people of all ages to live where they wish in housing that is fully accessible. Their mission is to ensure that whatever age or ability, every person in Canada can live in housing that is fully accessible. To this end, we call on every level of government to make universal design mandatory in every unit in all new multi-unit residential buildings. So at that, I'm going to hand it over to Kate to give her presentation. And then we have a second speaker for housing, and then we'll go into Q&A. So as I said, as the presentation is going along, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we will tackle them at the end of the presentation. So Kate, over to you.
Thank you very much for the thorough introduction. I'm going to skip down. I was going to say some of that. The Accessible Housing Network is kind of a very informal organization of organizations. The Older Women's Network had been working on the issue of accessible housing for some time and realized that we really needed to work with other organizations to be heard. And it's very hard to be heard. We're demanding, as you said, that the Ontario Building Code be changed to require that every unit in new multi-unit buildings be fully accessible. It's a human right. And it's encouraging to see your interest and concern in the crisis in accessible housing. I think the theme inclusion from the start really says it all. Because we're all just temporarily abled. If we're not already dealing with a disability, we will be soon. And because an accident, illness, or old age can take away a lot of our ability to get around. Or we might end up with other kinds of disabilities. It's easy to think about it just in terms of wheelchairs or walkers, but there are disabilities of every type. So the issue of accessibility in housing affects us all, either now or in the future. My introduction to this issue came quite a couple of decades ago, more than a couple of decades ago, when I was living in a co-op in Scarborough. And there was a little girl who was about 8 years old who used an electric wheelchair, and she couldn't play with any of the other kids. I'd see her outside in the summer, scooting around with the other kids at the corner. But she was in one of the very few accessible units in a large co-op. So in bad weather, she couldn't play with anybody else because all the other townhouses had steps front and back. So I thought, well, someday maybe I can do something about this. So that's what I'm doing now. And now in my 80s, I have a personal interest in this. I've had 1 knee replacement. My husband's had 2 hip replacements. And when we came home from the hospital, we couldn't even get in the door of our bathroom with a walker. It's just, this is a condo, but it's an old condo, and it was built with narrow bathroom doors. I don't know what they were thinking when they designed this. Obviously, it was designed by some hip young person who wasn't the least bit worried about getting hit by a truck. So despite the fact that over 24% of Ontarians have a disability, there's no law requiring that any housing be accessible. The Ontario Building Code only requires that 15% of units, apartments, new apartments in new buildings be visitable, not accessible enough to live there. You can basically come in and have a cup of tea. And the AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, does not even mention housing, even though David Onley has done a report asking for housing to be included. The current government has totally ignored his report. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Ontario and Canadian Human Rights Codes, and the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities all prohibit discrimination based on age or ability. But the AODA and the Building Code are in contravention of all of these. The Human Rights Code is supposed to take precedence over all other laws in Ontario, including the Building Code, but every government of Ontario has totally ignored this, the current government and the previous government. But we know that the benefits of accessible housing include reduced costs for long-term care facilities. Many people could remain in their homes if they were accessible, freeing up spaces in nursing homes, and protection of seniors and persons with disabilities from catastrophes like the long-term care during COVID. Accessible housing reduces the need for in-home PSW help. It reduces the need for help with housework. It leads to improved mental and physical health. There are fewer falls, fewer ambulance calls, fewer hospitalizations. And people with disabilities are, if they have accessible housing, are better able to become employed or to increase their hours of work. So what's wrong with this? I'd like to know. No tax dollars should ever create accessibility issues. And cost is not a valid concern. You'll hear builders and politicians say it's too expensive, we can't afford it. But it's not true. CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing, has done reports showing that the cost of building an apartment is the same, whether it's accessible or not, as long as you plan it from the design stage. It's renovations to existing housing that are so expensive. And by the way, the Ontario Home Builders Association and the Canadian Home Builders Association both have programs to train their members in doing accessibility renovations for people with houses. Baby boomers, they figure, have a lot of money. So it's basically a cash cow. So of course, they're not supporting us in demanding that new buildings be accessible. They make more money doing renovations. The municipalities tell us they have to wait for the province to change the building code, but this isn't true. Every city can make universal design mandatory in any new housing developed through its programs. So any new developments built with any tax dollars or on land made available by the municipality or through agreements to waive development fees or taxes, they can all require that the housing built be universal design. And we're urging Toronto to take that action. And of course, we get back the same argument. Oh, no, we can't possibly do it. No, we can't force the developers to do this. But of course, the developers tell us that they will build whatever they are required by government to do. They will build to code provincially, but no more. So let's change the building code. They will build to what the municipalities demand. So let's change what municipalities demand. So now with the election, we're calling on every candidate in the Ontario election to sign the Accessible Housing Pledge, that if they're elected, they'll change the building code to make it mandatory that all new apartments and condos be universal design. So far, 16 candidates have signed. That's not nearly enough, but it's interesting. It includes the leader of the Green Party and several Green candidates. It includes several NDP candidates and a few Liberal candidates, no Conservatives. You can print copies of the pledge from our website, accessibleHousingNetwork.org, accessibleHousingNetwork.org. And if pledges are signed by a candidate, your candidates in your riding, just get them to scan it and email it to us, accessibleHousingNetwork@gmail.com. And that email address is on the website too. Then we're posting on our website the name, party, and riding of every candidate who signs the pledge, and with a photo, if we have the photo. So please help us make this urgent change by asking your candidates in your riding to sign the pledge. And after the election, please get after your new MPP and insist that they support our call to change the building code. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Kate. I certainly agree, and I'm a big proponent that no tax dollars are ever spent to create barriers, regardless of what they are. We talk about the crisis in affordable housing. That is a huge issue, certainly in our municipality. But the crisis in accessible housing is something that does not get nearly as much airplay. And I certainly appreciate the work of the Accessible Housing Network in bringing that issue forward. For everyone that is wondering about any links or any websites or whatever, all of that will come out in our follow-up email to the summit. So you will get, as Kate has said, the Accessible Housing Network's website and the link to their pledge. And the election is on Thursday, so that's we need to. Yes, there, Kate's shaking her fist, but yes, we need to make our voices heard. As Kate said, we talk about 22% of the population. And yes, when you're talking baby boomers, it's 40% of the population over the age of 65 that has some form of a disability. So this is a number that is only going to continue to grow. So I certainly appreciate the work, Kate, that you and your group are doing. So we are going to move now to Sarah Collier, and Sarah is she's the Director of Community Development and Support Services for Community Living Brant. And Sarah's going to talk to us about an initiative that Community Living Brant has, which is, sorry, I've got it in front of me. Community-based solutions to housing. So this is, I like the idea of this because I'm all about thinking outside the box. So excited to hear what Sarah has to say, and then we are going to move into our Q&A. So I'm getting a few questions in the chat, and so what we'll do is after Sarah's presentation. And I know Sarah has some events coming up around their initiative. So again, we will share those with everybody that gets the follow-up email. But yes, we are really looking forward to Q&A and discussions after each session. So Sarah, take it away.
Thank you, Linda. And thank you, Kate. I absolutely love the idea of building, and I know lots of you here love building and creating built environment that we can live in throughout our whole lives. So certainly accessibility is, a huge piece of that. And I think, so the work that we do, and I can hear it in Kate's voice too, that, we're often very passionate about and at a crossroads of housing. So a little bit about us and myself. I'm a community developer, so an asset-based community developer. So basically we look for gifts in the community and we build on them, or gifts in people and we build on them. So I absolutely love the theme this year of inclusion from the start, because that certainly speaks to that. Starting in your community, in yourself, and really focusing on those gifts. Sort of marry that with, our frustration or crossroads of housing for ourselves, our families, our communities, and people we support. And that's kind of how we all landed in this space. And so my discussion today really is a broad invitation. So it's an invitation to all of you. It's an invitation to everybody in your networks or families to join us and help to further the discussion. And like Kate said, really to hear everybody's voice and to give everybody's voice or perspective a chance and a platform to gather gifts and resources in our community. So I do have a picture. Linda, am I able to share my picture on my screen? Is that okay? Yeah.
Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay.
Go ahead. I've given you
That's okay. Thank you.
permission to screen share.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what we call a graphic harvest, but this has happened in regards to our discussion that we're starting to have around community-based response to housing. This particular picture was created, as you can see, on the 26th of May this year by Yvonne Holloway. And it's just the beginning of starting to have discussions, share our voices and passions in this community-based response to housing summit, which is a co-designed summit. So currently we don't even know what topics other than housing will be discussed. So just a little bit of a background of how we all came to be to have this this summit and discussions. Over the past couple of years, we've been very lucky to work with a few people. One of them was Peter Pupella, and he does what he calls experiential learning and discovery and the hosting arts. He also calls what he does generative journalism, but really he sets the stage and space for small group discussion, exploration, and voicing your gifts and passion. So as an organization, we've been able to hold these small spaces and conversations over the last 2 years. Also, what came up for us in our strategic plan was housing. So obviously housing and the broader community, that's a huge issue for all of us. So that also filtered through into this process that we had with Peter over the last few years. So we gathered a small group of people from those conversations to start to really form a leader group and an invitation. So not so much to form the summit or the agenda for what we're going to talk about other than housing, but really to sort of gather folks together and see what we could do to invite. So that group consisted of Risha Burke, Jason Webb, Carrie Sanowski, Maritza Yachin Robertson, Yvonne Holiday, our graphic harvester here, and Peter Pupella. Now, they all wear many hats. Some of you will know them. Some of them, work in housing, but all of them are passionate about our housing and also having a community-based response to it. So what are the gifts that community has that we can work together to pool together to create housing and issues that are facing folks that are trying to be housed or underhoused or have some barriers to housing? So we have set in front of us 3 dates. So one date has already happened. This is the discussion and the graphic harvest we look at right now. So we've had one conversation. So we have another conversation set for June 9th, which will be all welcome. And we can share the links like Linda said, and you drop into the space and it's small group discussions. So all of us will be split into groups of 2 or 3. There will be questions posed, and then everybody gets a turn to speak and to share their perspective on that question. So part of the process is it's very democratic. You time each other, you share space, and even if there's silence, then maybe that is part of your discussion. And I know, I think you're all probably thinking to yourself, that's very awkward. I know I have in the past, and people try to fill the spaces, But in part of this conversation and discussion, it's very important to sort of let that sit a little bit and see where that takes you as a group. So that's our conversation on June 9th. And the summit will be very similar to that, except we already have about 50 participants registered. So people will land in this space and we will be guided by Peter to help us create our discussions in our breakout rooms. It's really that simple. You can show up and just be listening too, or you can show up and participate as much as you want. So it's also important to know that nobody's going to make you, or it is a safe space to be. So I would certainly encourage yourselves and everybody to participate. So sometimes people call these spaces, an open space or an unconference where people show up and create, the dialogue. It is also our hope that there'll be tangible, actionable items that we'll be able to work towards. So at the end of the 5-hour process on June 23rd, we'll have actionable items and groups that they will create together to work towards. So you'll be able to see what that looks like in terms of action. And I think that was very important to us, all of us who have sat on lots of committees and engagements and really have some, desire to do some action. So that is also an outcome of these engagements. So our invitation that we created, which we'll send out, like Linda said, and please reach out to me at any point in time. As she said, I work at Community Living Brant in Brantford, Ontario. Happy to share my contact information. And how our group has sort of framed the invitation is this, and I'm just going to read it to you. If you would like to experience a place to explore new ideas, being heard by and hearing from others, engaged, critical, passionate, compassionate, goal-oriented, productive, and inclusive discussions, a shakeup by inviting diverse voices, because really that is the key to greatness. Community housing solutions that speak to both social inclusion and social welfare, citizens and communities doing better, people-centered solution sharing, work in a project that will actually create some change, a foothold, a lifeline, a pathway to home, a sense of connection as we collaborate, community building vibes. That might be my favorite. And I just, as I close off here, I'd just like to share one story. So a story that's really impacted me over the last, there's several, but one of them in particular that was shared by Risha in one of our housing discussions, and not mentioning anyone's name specifically to keep people's confidence and privacy. But she was chatting with a person who wanted to attend our conversation or summit. And that person expressed to her that they didn't feel comfortable leaving their possessions unattended because currently they don't have a secure location for their possessions. And that how having a space where they could put their possessions, how that might help them, and access to tech might help them to have their voice being heard. So I think that's exactly what we're talking about in these kinds of discussions, where people in community can bring forward, what they see as a barrier or what they see as an opportunity, and really having their voices heard. So we're working obviously to have that person join us, but or anybody that would like to join us that has those kind of barriers to participating. So we have several partners, the library, ourselves, that have free tech that people can come in, and there's so many other resources we can link people to, Laurier or employment resources around town, here locally anyways, in Brantford and Brant County, that we can help people to engage fully in the discussion so that their voices are heard. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, because I know so many of you are so passionate and have done so much work in housing and making, our communities so much better. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions at all, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you, Linda.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions in the chat. Please feel free to unmute yourself and we can have hopefully an open discussion around housing and both the initiatives that Kate and Sarah have brought forth for discussion. Yes, so Aaron just
No,
has some questions.
actually, hello.
Hi, Aaron.
No, sorry, my screen there is written the Aaron Devja. It's my son's name. I'm actually Uttam Kumar Devja from Nepal.
Oh, you're from Nepal. See, we are generally international officially.
Yeah. Actually, just want to introduce myself. I'm a spinally injured disabled person in Nepal. Since 7 years, I used to be in a wheelchair bounded, but for since couple of years, I started walking with a elbow stick, and I have an organization called Accessible Himalayas. We're trying to promote for the tourism sector, tourism for all in Nepal. I think you may all know that Nepal is a beautiful country with the Himalayas. Just want to be part of this summit to know how we can also upgraded our accessibility in our country, because the Nepal is a very poor country, and then we have got a the very hard life with the hills, and then the remote part it's almost like undeveloped places in the countries. We have no toilets, no accessible hospitals, no accessible schools, and then other environment is very hard. But I'm trying to set up my farm as well as a small resort a little bit 33 kilometer far from the Kathmandu. Anyway, what I'm trying to learn with you in this summit is I'm trying to promote this tourism for all in my places in Nepal. How we can make a network with your accessibility summit, your organization, and the network between around the world. And then we have no such company, such an organization in Nepal that can give the ideas to our policy maker to make accessible environment in our city as well as urban areas in Nepal. So yeah, accessible housing, I know since I became disabled, I felt lots of challenges while I'm going to the party, while I'm going to my children's school, while I'm going to the market, while I'm going to the several places where I like to go. I need to be fight with the struggle with the step accessibility. So
yes, I certainly understand. All I can think of is, how lucky we are here in Canada for
Yes, I know. You are
ability
very lucky.
we have, and
Can
we
I can I make my word finished or short? I don't want to extend. I don't want to make it long. Anyway, so the things what I am interested with your company, with your organization to be involved is I would like to get the ideas to share how you are doing there and how I can implement in my places because I'm doing something fine for my resort that I would like to show people that this type of example you should make to the another hotels and the guest house and the public places. Even I don't know all the accessibility ideas, so I'm get involved with your summit. So I just want to listen you, and then later on in the future also I would like to connect with you all. I would like to connect with Sarah. I would like to connect with Kate and the other participants and to make a network, good network that I would like to get ideas from you and implement in our country. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And all I can say is, that it's taking on a task to implement accessibility in a country that obviously does not have any accessibility requirements such as Canada. I am actually a certified community champion for the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with
Yeah.
Disabilities, and accessibility is a basic human right. So that might be a place to start, at least for pushing governments to recognize accessibility. But I certainly do thank you, and thank you so much for joining us all the way from Nepal.
Can I just have a 1 minute again?
Um,
I'm also planning to have a meeting or just like you are doing online, but this is a virtual meeting. I would like to invite some of the people in Nepal for the meeting that you are the winner of accessibility award winner from the United Nations, I think. Yes.
no, yes. So I'll
So
get into that a little bit later when I speak. But I do want to move on because I do have a couple of other questions in the chat specifically around
yeah,
Sarah and Kate's presentation.
Can I
finish.
just say something in response?
Sure.
With regard to Nepal, if you're trying to develop a resort for tourists, there was a hotel in England that decided to make one room fully accessible. And it was so popular, they made another room accessible. And eventually they had such a waiting list that they made all the rooms accessible because there was such demand. So if you build your resort fully accessible from the beginning and advertise it all over the world as fully accessible, and if people can get to it, even if they have a disability, you'll certainly be in business. And there is a lot of information about what accessible rooms and doorways and everything look like on the website that the government of Canada has, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. If you go to that website and look up accessibility and universal design, you'll see lots of ideas for how to design your rooms. So I think you were looking for that kind of information. And then beyond that, with regard to internationally speaking, I think it would be great if we could link up internationally. There are people in New Zealand and Australia and Denmark and everywhere working on this. And we've been trying to get hold of the UN Special Rapporteur on accessibility and disabilities, and we haven't had any response. But maybe if we have people from several countries saying, okay, it's time for a conference based on this, and maybe Linda, you could help with this. Let's get an international conference going on Zoom, so then people could go, it wouldn't be an expense, and talk about this internationally. But the trouble is the UN has has only the power to speak. It can't force governments to do anything. So we still in our own governments have to insist that they honor the UN Declaration on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
Yeah, sorry, can I just interpret to you? The problem with the Nepali policymaker, I would like to, they don't want to do with this online virtual meetings and Zooms almost freely. So if we can have a, you know, the face-to-face meeting, then we can make pressure to the policymaker that these are the points to do for the policy to make these places accessible, so we can get this feedback later on. That's all.
Yes. So a couple of comments in the chat. So even some people are saying, even though we're much further ahead of Nepal in many ways, we still are in the same fix because our advanced laws are not being enforced. So legislation is one thing, but enforcing it and having it put into practice, you know, across your municipality, across your country, across whatever, is a whole other movement. So as I said, I certainly commend your efforts to bring some accessibility. And as Kate said, if you build it, they will come. I will tell you, as a traveler myself, I spend a significant amount of time looking for accessible accommodations. So we are, you know, that would be something. So Kate, to your question, yes, sure, an international conversation around accessibility in different countries would certainly be something that I can see that we would be interested in pulling together. Sarah, you've said that, yes, we would like to invite Aaron and any other folks. And so, as I said, the email that goes out following the summit will have the information of all the speakers and any upcoming events or things like that that people can be, you know, click on your link and get registered, join the conversations. That's what you know, helps advance our efforts in accessibility, is people talking and people taking action. So there is another question that I do have, and this is for Sarah, and it's, how do you see the summit findings being implemented?
That's a really interesting question. So we did some thinking around this. I think it's very broad because we don't know what passions or perspectives will be brought forward. So it was our goal to end with actionable items and making connections to people locally, internationally, I hope, so that we can then begin and gather our gifts, resources, and create tangible things. So that is my hope. My hope is also that, or our hope is that we make really critical connections with people, so they can build relationships and really create, you know, great things, particularly in housing and community. So, and I also wanted to mention, Aaron, not to out anybody already in the room, but Community Living Ontario has some lovely resources too on their website, and also a, so I would definitely check them out as well in regards to housing and what that looks like. But yes, that is a very broad, what we're expecting. And also I would invite all of you to come and help us with our expectations and to help us create what that's going to look like together. So.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer the question?
It did.
Oh, good.
The oh, and something just left my brain. No, I'll come to, Community Living Ontario. So our our advocacy session from 2 to 3. Two of the speakers are actually from the Council on Community Living Ontario. So in our advocacy session, I certainly expect will cover a number of issues that people are interested in. And we expect that session will actually formulate a great deal of discussion around different issues around accessibility that people would like to see addressed, and obviously housing being one of them. So for that, I want to thank both Kate from the Accessible Housing Network and Sarah from Community Living Brant for bringing forth your projects and initiatives around housing and accessible housing. I don't see any other questions. See any other questions in the chat?
I have one more thing to share. Can I, Linda? Is that okay? Okay, so I also mentioned I'm a community developer, asset-based community developer. There's an awesome resource on ABCD. You said earlier there was someone here from Ireland, so Cormac Russell, but there's also international organizations that do that, and that really works from the grassroots up. It really works from the local up. And there's an awesome, I can share this with Linda to go out into the emails, but there's an awesome repository that's international around how communities start to build, their gifts and that groundswell of voice. So I could share that as well. And housing would be as part of that too, right? And all areas of that. So I'm happy to share that as well.
Great, sure. And if you can shoot that to me, Sarah, I'll make sure that all of the resources that we discussed in the summit go out in the follow-up email. So for anyone that's interested in, kind of responding or being involved, and Aaron sent me of Sarah's email. So I will, all the speaker contact information will be in that follow-up email. So you'll have access to all kinds of things.
Can I mention one other resource, another website you could check out? Unitarian Commons, which is a group that I've been involved with, trying to start co-housing, which is everybody has their own private unit, but we share meals and some community space. But the difference in this co-housing would be that it would be entirely accessible. So you'll see information on the website about that vision, unitariancommons.ca, I think it is.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, I certainly know from some of the work some of the projects that I've been involved in that, and this is very much speaking to Sarah's project in terms of looking at community-based solutions to housing, but it comes a time where we need to, I say, think outside the box. So everybody doesn't need to live in their unit by themselves and be responsible for everything. There are lots of ways to look at safely and collaboratively really look at ways that people can get housing that is not them living alone in their unit, having to look after everything themselves. So I know several years ago I was part of a group that we pulled together funding for the building of a supportive housing unit, because we talk about wait lists for accessible, affordable housing. We talk about wait lists for affordable housing, wait lists for supportive housing for persons with disabilities that require those supports is another, nightmare that people, don't hear about. And so we certainly support any and all discussions around how we can improve housing for not only persons with disabilities, but certainly everyone that needs to be housed.
Linda, can I comment?
Yeah, Lucy, I said you just unmuted, so I felt like you had something to say.
I'm sitting here all this time being very quiet because you'll all hear what I have to say in my presentation and what I'm about. But we do have a housing committee in this community. And it's interesting because as the world population of older adults is aging and getting bigger, because we all age from the time we're born, what's happening at the same time is not only are there the existing disabilities that might have to be addressed, but they are growing. And it doesn't matter to be age. It doesn't have to be age. And so people think, I'm talking from the residents' perspective now, not from any of us that are involved with the planning. They're not going to move. They want to age in place. So what happens then is the naturally occurring retirement communities called NORCs. And they're all people living in something that is not perhaps accessible now and needs to be made accessible. And that's where your building people are coming in to play, because they are having to react to the needs that are being expressed, that the people want to stay where they are. And there's no big bucks out there to build something new for people that are not, they're not building for the people with accessibility. So they don't even hear it. So I'm talking from the resident standpoint now. I'm not going to talk about housing in any detail in my presentation. I will mention it. But I just want to point that out. That the whole issue here around the accessibility for the future needs to be addressed now. And I was really appreciating Kate's and Sarah's input. So that's my 2 cents worth on housing. I could go on and on, as you know, so I'll shut up now.
Sal, you raised your hand, so go right ahead.
Yes, it looks like we might be getting another conservative government, which is going to continue doing what it's done. And the accessibility issue is not going to be at the top of its agenda. The problem is, how do we get all those who have disabilities of whatever age involved in the political process so that they do vote for change in Ontario?
Well, that's a question that everyone is sitting back. That and I hear you, Saul. It's
Well, in the States, they had to rise up. If anybody's seen the movie Crip Camp, if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. Please see it. It's my inspiration. It's only COVID that's kept me from rolling out and marching in the streets and protesting. The kids that went to Crip Camp got together later. A lot of them went to university in San Francisco because it's more accessible because of the weather. They occupied a federal building for a month. And what was it? The Black Panthers fed them. And when all their power was cut off, the kids that were deaf used their sign language to communicate with people down in the street. So they occupied this building. They occupied major intersections. They did a crawl up of the Capitol steps, and I can't wait to do a crawl up, everybody. We're just looking for the location. The only way we'll ever get action is with civil disobedience and really getting the media on side. So I'm calling on you to be ready to take to the streets.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, I agree. Nothing happens unless people take action, which just me and my little corner of the world here spend a significant amount of time advocating for accessibility. Just it seems like everywhere I go. So we do have a podcast that we've just launched this month, and so if anyone is interested in being a guest on our podcast to talk about accessibility or your types of where your passions lay, then certainly drop me a note there. So I'm going to go with Nicole. She's had her hand up first. So Nicole, go ahead and.
Hi, I am so all in with what Kate said.
Nicole's
Can
all
you
in.
just take my words right there?
Great. We might end up with a little civil disobedience group here so Sarah, you've
Yeah.
got your hand.
So I
up.
can't add, so Nicole, Kate, Aaron, you have to come to our discussion on June 23rd. You're going to find so many like-minded folks. But also I would like to point out on Community Living Ontario's website, there's a Real Abilities Film Fest happening soon. And there's, I love Crip Camp movie on Netflix, but there is a variety of films out there to watch in regards to accessibility, housing. And also I shared with Linda, if you're looking in Ontario who to vote for, there's CBC Vote Compass that I love. I do it every time they put it out for every election, and it helps you to navigate your issues and where you stand to vote. And then what areas are accessible to vote and how to get there, and how to do virtual or mail-in voting. I love that. So I would also encourage folks to do that. Yeah, those are the things. So please join us on the 23rd, and please check out Real Abilities. There's some awesome movies that you can watch about people and their stories. So I would encourage all.
Yes, thank you. So one last question, and then we're going to move into our next segment. Go right ahead.
I wouldn't want anybody to think that I've given up on the election or on democracy. I'm certainly hoping that we will have a minority government at the very least, so that then the opposition parties can gang up on the Tories and make them change their way of doing things. But if they should get reelected, this does not mean that we are dead, that we've given up. We must all the more get involved and mobilize ourselves, because the fight goes on. It will not end on June the 2nd. It must not end on June the 2nd.
I agree. So we've got thumbs up, and we're going to get a little bit more into that. So it's 1:02. So just to keep us on track, we are going to move into our second segment. I do want to say, if anybody wants to take a break at any time, feel free to check out and, do your thing, come back and join us. I know we've got some people that are going to be coming in and out. They're here for certain sessions, and then they're going to be leaving us. So I'm happy to admit people as they come. So anyway, so our second session, we're going to start with accessible age-friendly communities, and we're going to start with Lucy. So Lucy Marco is the president of the Grand River Council on Aging. And Lucy's bio, so Lucy has 57 years of experience in manufacturing, marketing, human resources, administration, and management position, combined with 50 years of volunteer service in over 40 community boards, advisory committees, and service clubs. A recipient of many awards, Lucy is most proud of her federal citation for citizenship, YMCA Peacemaker Medal, Rotary Sunrise Paul Harris Fellow Award, Chamber of Commerce Outstanding Business Achievement Award, and the naming of a Wilfrid Laurier University student residence as Lucy Marco Place. And if you are in Brantford, Lucy is a local legend in our community for her work. And I myself have worked with Lucy on countless boards and organizations. So that being said, Lucy, I'm going to turn it over to you for your presentation. And I have allowed, screen sharing, so you can go ahead and share your screen for your
Well, that would
presentation.
help if I would, I have a brand new computer, and so bear with me for a moment while I just, I don't know where it went. So, just a minute. I will get it. I am so sorry about this. I'm having a wonderful time trying to get this thing straight, but anyway. I think I found it. No, I didn't. I'm sorry, everybody. I had this all ready to go.
That's okay. Take your time.
Not to worry, Lucy, technology is not always our friend.
Well, this is the weirdest thing. How could it possibly disappear? Well, okay, I found it. I found it.
Ah,
So,
Eureka.
now I have to get back to Zoom. Okay, now we'll try this again. And I think this is the one. Well, now I can't get it from the beginning. There we go. Can everybody see that? Oh,
Yep.
I am so sorry.
Wonderful.
I'm 83 people, and I have a brand new computer with Windows 11 and a brand new cell phone, and I am really in technology. I don't know what. I'm on one heck of a learning curve. So bear with me. I'm going to speak to you actually today. I really have want to thank Linda very much for thinking about inviting me to do this, because I'm speaking for the residents of the voices of the city of Brantford, the county of Brant, and 6 nations of the Grand River. But for the people that are here that are not from this area and may not be from Canada, the Age-Friendly Movement is a global initiative initiated by the World Health Organization. And for the gentleman from Nepal, he needs to check and see on the World Health Organization website if there's anything going on in his particular area, because that is one way to get some voices to talk about common needs. So I'm going to take you through creating a community for a lifetime and tell you that the Council on Aging here is sharing the voices of elders or older adults in order to help the municipalities and anybody else in the organization or in the community create a community for a lifetime for all ages from 5 to 105. So the Grand River Council on Aging is not about old people for old people. It's about the aging process. So let's talk about, I'm going to start off with talking about who we are, and we're going to talk about what we do, and we're going to talk about the people in our community. So the Grand River Council on Aging is a registered charitable nonprofit organization, and its whole role in life is to educate and encourage the development of an age-friendly community culture. Now, the World Health Organization defines that as being a community that optimizes opportunities for health, participation, and security. Doesn't matter anybody. We all have the opportunity in the municipalities we live in to optimize our own lives on a daily basis through health, participation, and security. Having said that, the World Health Organization recognizes that municipalities are the ones that have the biggest impact on our lives on a daily basis. It encourages the municipalities to develop policies, services, settings, and structures to support and enable the residents to age actively. Now, in this community, we're very proud that both the city of Brantford and the county of Brant are officially recognized by the age-friendly, by the World Health Organization as age-friendly communities, and that the 6 nations of the Grand River has completed its elders journey and doing age-friendly community assessment and doing plans for their own residents. What's important to know is that in Ontario, there is an Ontario Association of Councils on Aging that also represents the voices of the residents in their communities, and their municipalities, of course, are all different. There are also age-friendly networks that are meetings of East, West, South Ontario municipalities that share all these things that the World Health Organization recommends. So the 2021 Canadian Census has just been released. And it was really great to see the same thing was confirmed from the 2016 census. There are more, there's now 19% of the population is over 65. That's more than those that are under 14 and under. Now, of interest is the fact that that projection that for 2030 that is shown there shows that it was projected that by 2030, 8 years from now, 55 years and older would represent 35% of our total population. We're waiting to see how that holds up because that's been the same since 2006 census. So we're looking to see what the 2021 census shows us. What is really important, and to all of us here today, is to understand the impact of mobility on all of us as we live. It's not age that has the biggest impact on our life. Of course it does. Every day we age. But mobility is what impacts the daily aspect of our lives. And so we at the Council on Aging, we refer to the residents of our community as being go-go, slow-go, and no-go. That's pretty straightforward. If I use transportation as an example, go-go, they can go anywhere they want. They can go up and down, they can ride, they can walk, they can ride, run, they can take part in sports, they can buy groceries. But if they're a slow-go, something's slowing them down. Now that could be simply a mom with children that's slowing her down. Or it could be somebody that's had an accident. Or it could be a chronic disability. And that chronic disability could be physical. It could be hearing. It could be eyesight. It could be medical. It's something that's slowing them down, and people have to think about how they're going to get where they're going to go and what's going to happen when they get to the other end. And then no-go, well, the daily aspects of living are exactly the same thing for them. But how can transportation be an issue if they're stuck and they're not going anywhere? It's an issue because for them, and they're socially isolated perhaps, and they're worrying about how are they going to get the services they need? How are their friends and family going to get to visit with them? So if we look about that, and what the Councils on Aging do is that we listen. We're listening to people with lived experience, and get used to seeing that acronym around, PWLE. It's an acronym that the Council on Aging has actually been used since 2008 when we started in this community. It is the residents of Grand River Council on Aging that we are listening to, of this community that the Council on Aging is listening to. And then we're sharing whatever experience that they have that with people or organizations that have the resources to respond. That's going to become a little more clear in a minute. But it is the practice of the Age-Friendly Community Global Initiative to consult with the residents of the community, no matter where they are in this world. In our community, another example in this area is the transition to Ontario health teams, which is going on right across the province. And those health teams are now accessing and calling out for input from people with lived experience as the whole Ontario healthcare system supply of services is being redeveloped. So let's look at the words elder versus senior. Who are these people with lived experience? Well, whoops, I've lost my page. Now I've got something all mixed. I'm having a terrible time. I am so sorry. Here we are. Don't go and get a new computer just before you're going to do a presentation.
Don't worry, Lucy, we're following along.
Okay. We like to say that we promote the voices of elders, and that term was preferred by participants that have taken part in focus groups that we've conducted in this community from 2008 through to 2015. And the people that took part in those focus groups, they preferred the word elder. Why? Because it is a global title of respect. It recognizes wisdom gained through life experience. Now, we published a community impact report in 2017, around the same time as people started to use older adults as well as elders. So today we use elders and older adults in place of each other. But it's important to know that in our particular community, we have a very large number of Indigenous people. They recognize elders as being where the experience is to pass on to the younger ones. That is also worldwide. The World Health Organization refers to seniors and older adults and elders, depending what they're talking about. What's important to know is that you can be an elder at 45 because there's a couple of generations to pass information onto, experience onto. You don't have to wait to be 65 or 95. And if you look at the word senior, it's always got a qualifier. Senior kindergarten, senior school. You can go be 55 and go to Chopper's Drug and get a discount. But really what it is, 65 is the age when governments refer to people as seniors because that's the pensionable year. So when we think about all that and the people with lived experience, what can be done about the life that we're living in the community? We like to say that we have to use an age-friendly community. If we look at this graphic here, and we're looking at from childhood through to older adult and age, then you see that the mobility can change for all kind of different reasons as it goes through there. And what that doesn't show is that somebody might be wearing a hearing aid, and you can't see whether somebody has an eyesight thing. But you do know that there are times that you're going to have to perhaps use a walker, or a cane like me with a severe balance problem, or it may be a wheelchair. It may be short-term because if it's an accident. It may be long-term because it's chronic. So what we say about an age-friendly filter is that anybody planning or looking at making a change, whether that be a person in their home, their family, it be a business, it be an organization, be the municipality, questions should be asked about that change. Will it be safe? What about visibility? Will it be comfortable? How are we going to communicate to the people being impacted by the change? How are we going to reach them? Is customer service an aspect? So the most important thing is to know to ask questions. Quite often checklists are developed by using this filter. And the most important part of all of this is to respect the individual throughout the entire process. So let's look at that lived experience. Well, when it comes to generational, we have all kinds of life experience. Every one of us, we hear from our life experience in the generation that we lived in. And that's where we kind of form our opinions, like opinions with other people. And we happen to have habits that we might have known, we might have shared. It is one way of groups of people. But then if you look at the language we use by those people, oh my goodness. Well, my grandchildren are now adults and their parents. So I have great grandchildren. They all talk the language of technology today. I'm forever saying, what are you talking about? And of course, they have no concept about what I've lived. And so they'll say, what are you talking about? And that's the life that we live in today. And it's constantly changing around us. And then you add mobility, which we've just talked about, to those three things. And then you look at the education of all the different ages from 5 to 105. My goodness, when I went to school and learned math, I had to memorize the times table. They don't teach that anymore. Everybody has a computer. They don't even teach cursive writing anymore. Then if you look at social versus today versus social of yesterday, I'm from yesterday. Our social was to dance, play cards, sit down with the family for dinner. It's once a week for sure. Whereas today, the social of choice, quite often, the first choice is something that is technology, social media oriented. So what about that planning? Whether it be for customers, whether it be for the next, whoops. Looking at customer service as an example. If we look at customer service, whether it's going to be for customers, clients, patients, or employees, we've all been that all at the same time. Sometimes we're all that right now. And who's looking at what's being planned for us and what our mobility issues might be. And then if you add to it the demographics made up of 5 to 105, well, you can have a family with 2 or 3 different generations in it. And you can have different people within that family with different mobility issues, short-term, long-term. So then you look at, okay, here we are, we've got all these people, we got a plan for them, we've got services, we've got buildings, we've got roads, we've got sidewalks. What choices do we have to even talk to these people? How are we going to reach them? How can we plan to get to them? That's when we look at, well, should we use the radio? Should we use social media? What about TV? Should we be using print in some way? Okay, if we're going to use print, what's the size of the font? What language should we use? How basic should it be? How is it going to be presented? What are the colors? So when you talk about mobility, it's more than a physical disability. It can be a physical disability with others combined. And it can be something that isn't even visible. It might be a medical disability. So what's happening? What is happening with these people with lived experience? We tell them that they can be part of change. If we look back and we look today at how to plan for the future, traditionally, our communities happened as a result of societal changes. You know, over 100 years ago, our buildings and our streets and our communities were built for life as it was then. Whoever thought we'd live as long as we do now? In the 60s and 70s, youth revolutionized how life is worked today or lived today. So that's where we are going to, is the people that have lived to get to where we are today, because we need to plan for tomorrow. The youth of today will be the older adults of tomorrow. Who can even imagine what they're going to need to know? So the older adults today have experienced the comings and goings of different mobility changes. They've lived in different ways. They've communicated in different ways, but they've learned to cope with whatever life threw at them. And that's where shared experience comes in. So how are we planning in this community? Well, I had, in 2007, a group of volunteers realized that those statistics I shared with you earlier, that 35% of the population would be 55. And at that time, in 23 years, that's 15 years ago, nothing much has changed. And yet a lot has changed. And so I'm going to try and bring some of that out. But no one knew what that might mean for the community we lived in. So a steering committee was struck to go out and ask the elders or older people and their families, what did planners in the community need to know about planning for the future as people aged? The result was 99 recommendations. We thought, oh my God, 99 recommendations. Isn't that wonderful? Well, we evaluated how far the community had come. We published a 2008 master aging plan. So it was everything was evaluated in 2013 with the idea, gee, we better go back and ask everybody all over again. What progress have we made? And a 2-year process resulted in the 2017 Community Impact Report. Can you imagine? 628 suggestions came to us for that Community Impact Report. 135 of them related to housing. So what did we learn? We learned 2 very important pieces of information. This applies to absolutely every one of us, every day of our lives. People don't know what they need to know until they have a need to know. Then they absolutely don't know where to go to get it. The other thing that all of these people told us, it is important to listen to and understand the voices of lived experience. So I'm going to share with you how the Grand River Council on Aging reacted to that need to know. And I will share with you at the end how the municipalities reacted to that need to know. Because in our communities, we had the municipalities go through this whole process with us. We have on our website what we call the Info Hub. And it has 350 plus links that are to local resources, and they're all sorted by the 8 domains of an age-friendly community, such as civic participation and employment, communication and information, community support and health services, housing, outdoor spaces and building, respect and social inclusion, social participation, and transportation. Wow. Every one of those people with mobility issues have to live within the confines of the community. So go, slow go, and no go. There's references and referrals for all of them on those links. Now, COVID had a major impact on the 55 plus members of the community, because many of those people were the volunteers of all things community related. And so many of them became slow go and even no go, because they were isolated. They couldn't go anywhere. It changed their lives. It changed how they approached things. It changed where their housing was going to be, where they were living, where they would stay there. Activities to services and shopping, that all changed. And the words I like about our re-entry into a COVID reduced world is not that we're ever going to go back to what was normal. We're going to move forward to a new normal. And it is going to be changed for everyone, no matter what, whether they're go, slow go, or no go. So the Info Hub for information, it provides the contact for events, activities, helplines, support service, safety, just to name a few. The other thing that the older adults told us, and then particularly this applied to those with mobility issues. There were 2 things. First of all, they want to know where could they save some money. So we developed a seniors discount directory. And then they want to know within those places where they could save some money, was it accessible? To talk to business is to talk to business to make sure if they're going to offer seniors discounts and they want people to come, then they need to make sure that they're accessible once they get there. And the other is, while a lot of seniors are tech savvy, others have no access to technology, nor do they want to. Therefore, it's important that we be able to offer something that their family members or friends can print and give to them. And this is what this directory can be done. The other thing is what happened with the COVID is we had a lot of people staying home. And this was one opportunity to actually socially integrate those people with mobility issues with those that did not have mobility issues. We started offering virtual workshops free. They're offered every other Wednesday morning for 1 hour. And it's been wonderful to see the people with a disability join. So we've got slow go and no go mixed up together, and all kinds of subjects and activities that are of interest to the older population. In fact, if somebody missed a workshop, you can even see what they've been missed on our website. The other thing that we did was realize that, people needed to be connected. So we developed a community at home newsletter. It goes out every 2 days after every workshop. And it's interesting there because it provides all kinds of information on what's going on in the community. And for go and slow go both, they can both access it. It also is printable. Now, I said at the beginning that we're a charitable organization. I'm not here to solicit a donation, but I want to let you know that it is a charity, and we do depend on our volunteers and our fundraising efforts to proceed with anything that we're doing. Always looking for volunteers. And so in our community, we're always saying, if you know someone, do you know someone? Would you like to get involved? And if you do, please go on our website and fill out a volunteer information form, because what we do, whether they have a disability or not, is we help them understand where their skills can be used. Because you don't have to be able to lift and heavy things or do anything if you're going to register people at a desk. You can, there's all kinds of different things where the mobility issues can be also put, people with those can also be part of the volunteer. They can get involved in fundraising even as an activity. I just have to share this one with you. Last year, we used to, first of all, we used to have a taco fest, it was called, large community event in the Harmony Square in downtown Brantford. And COVID meant, well, that's the end of that. And we searched and tried to figure out what are we going to do to raise some funds for our operating expenses. So we had a virtual walk, the Grand Parade. And mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, nanas and Grammys, people were walking to support their loved ones. And they made up where they were going to walk. They could walk around their building. They could walk wherever they wanted to walk. It was a virtual walk. They did it to support the work of the Council on Aging and celebrating their loved ones. Well, in 2022, we're going to do it again, but we're going to do it in person. And so this is a place where those that want to still do it virtually, they can. For those that want to meet and greet, they can. So we're going to do it this year behind a local high school on a track. So that brings me to what I'm about to tell all of you. I'm attempting to create an understanding, we all are, of what an age-friendly community can be and how it is to be inclusive of all mobility issues. And so today I've tried to give you a different perspective, and I know that I have, and I'm going to tell you that I'm appointing you all as age-friendly champions. I want you to go out and I want you to spread the word. And I'll tell you, the best way to spread the word is when you see somebody and you see something that doesn't sit right, bring up the go, go, slow go, no go. If you see a step that's in the wrong place, if you see a ramp that's got the wrong height, I have a problem with ramp slopes, then bring up the go, go, slow go discussion, and you'll find it works. It works in miracles at home, at work, and in the community to access products and services. So you are all age-friendly champions. And now I want to show you an example of how the municipality, back in 2008, the city of Brantford got involved with the master aging plan. It adopted it. They said they would commit to it, and they did. And they started to implement, as budgets allowed it, stoplights replacements that showed the time that was available to cross the road. As well, those lights have a beep beep for people that are blind. So that is an age-friendly initiative. It will go on as long as stoplights are going on, and I'm sure there'll be many, many changes. Here's another one. Also back in 2008, we identified that we had interlocking bricks downtown. Now in Ontario, a lot of these cities have interlocking bricks. They're a nightmare for anybody that has a balance problem and or is walking with a cane or walking with walker. So we pointed out the voices that was a danger, really a danger, accidents waiting to happen. Well, the city made the commitment that they would replace those bricks with concrete as the budget and construction brought the opportunity up. And most recently, they did that around the Brantford Library downtown, all the way to the seniors, Beckett Seniors Building, and around to a parking garage, just to show you what voices can do in a community. So they did make a difference. As with the example about the sidewalks, we have a result of the Age-Friendly Summit process. It resulted in the 2017 Community Impact Report with its 628 suggestions. Following its publication, City of Brantford and the County of Brant both were recognized as the World Health Organization as age-friendly communities. They both have developed age-friendly healthy aging strategies. Their strategies cover all aspects: roads, sidewalks, buildings, lights, water. We live in. And of course, the municipalities are the ones that manage supportive housing or income support housing. So there are many, many things that came out of their involvement in listening to the people that resulted in their age-friendly plans. So if you wanted more information about the World Health Organization, and in our case, the Brant location approach to age-friendly communities, our website is www.grcoa. And that's where you'll find the info hub, the seniors discount directory, those things that I talked about. It's also where you'll see the community impact report and all the things that residents said that need to be thought about to plan for the future. And those 628 suggestions are broken down into 8 different reports. And the housing one has 135 suggestions. And so when it comes to housing, that's one that we're recommending that the summit that Sarah was talking about, I've provided all this information to them, that people be aware of what the residents say needs to be looked at for the future, because the residents are also doing exactly what Kate said, plan for the future. We have to live with what we've got, but it has to change. And that's that. So I think I'm over to you, Linda. And I will leave it to you to take over.
Can't thank Lucy enough for her presentation. She is a passionate advocate. I am just going to do a little bit of a presentation that is also kind of in line with Lucy's age-friendly community. And I call it accessible age-friendly community. So Lucy and I have a lot of discussions around Lucy and her age-friendly lens, whereas I approach the community and the advocacy work I do with an accessibility lens. The Grand River Council on Aging is one of our partners, along with the Brant Chamber of Commerce and the Brant Business Resource Center, in a series of webinars that we're producing called Accessibility is Good for Business. So we are trying to engage the business community with our webinars in understanding that being accessible is good for business. It brings in more customers, it improves your bottom line, and the world is short-staffed, so we're looking at webinars that will show how an inclusive hiring practice or embracing an inclusive workforce can really help your business. So our webinar series, as I said, is in partnership with 3 of our local organizations. Our April session was the business case for accessibility. Our May session, which got pushed to June 7th because of a power outage here at my house. So June the 7th, we are doing what is the AODA and why does your business need to comply? And then on June the 21st, we will have the Ontario Disability Employment Network presenting enhancing business performance through inclusive hiring. So we are, you know, I'm a passionate advocate for accessibility, and we're trying to get the word out to the business community through our partner organizations that accessibility is good for business. And as Lucy said, we talk about today, 22% of the population has some form of a disability that affects their mobility, their vision, or their hearing. But the percentage of the population over the age of 65 is actually 40%, and that population is continuing to grow, as we all know. And as Lucy pointed out, the percentage of people over the age of 55 is much higher than the percentage of the population under the age of 15. So businesses really need to understand that in order for their business to survive and to thrive, that they really need to embrace accessibility. And as Lucy said, age-friendly, that accessibility age-friendly lens. And it basically is just everything needs to be inclusive for everyone. And we've got a lot of work to do, but I sense a little civil disobedience in all of us. So we're going to open it up for questions now. I've got some questions in the chat, and then I see Sal's got his hand up. So Sal, why don't you go ahead, and then I'll pull some questions out of the chat here. Oh, you're muted, so there, I'll just.
Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation, Lucy. I belong to a group that's doing virtually the same thing. I feel like we're all engaged in inventing the wheel. And it must be happening all over Ontario. The age-friendly council ought to be tying these strings together. And I wanted to know if your presentation can be shared with us, because I'd like to present it to my group. I'd like to show it to them. And is the recording of today's summit also available? Because once again, I'd like to share it with my group.
If you share this recording, it'll have me in the presentation together.
Yes, so just so that everyone knows, the entire summit is being recorded. And as soon as my team loads it, it'll be actually on the Accessibility Solutions YouTube channel. And that link will come out in the follow-up email. So everybody will have the discussions, the presentations, and as I said, the follow-up email will have the speaker contact information and some of the other resources that have been shared in the summit. So yeah, we really do appreciate your commitment to kind of, for lack of a better word, continuing to spread the word to as many people as we can. We're a small group, but I've worked with Lucy on a number of initiatives over the last, oh, now we're going to age both of us, but probably 10 to 15 years just in our community. And in my work with the Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, we're looking at spreading that word and getting it out, across the province. So primarily the business, I feel like a lot of time I'm preaching to the converted, right? So the people sitting here in this summit are not the ones that necessarily need to be hearing the message. It's the ones that aren't here that need to be. So Wayne says, wow, excellent information. And Lucy, you are a breath of fresh air. So,
thank you.
So thank you for that. So do we have any other questions around kind of accessibility or age-friendly community initiatives? Anyone have anything they'd like to add? Sarah has left us. She had to go. She wasn't able to stay for the entire summit, but I will say that Sarah and I have worked on an asset-based community development symposium for the past 4 years, where we are, really looking at taking an inventory of, as Sarah said, everyone's gifts in the community, and being able to share that information with everyone in the community, because everyone does have gifts. And as Lucy said, people, they don't know what they don't know. And that's actually one of my sayings that I've had for years as well, that they don't know what they don't know. And as Lucy said, and then when they have a need to know, they don't know where to go. So if you take one takeaway from our summit today, then let it be the fact that yes, everyone, as Lucy said, everyone can be an age-friendly champion. Everyone can be an advocate for accessibility in your community. And we're certainly, I know in our community, Lucy is she's a real community champion.
Well, and I will encourage I'd be interested to know the communities that are represented here. If you don't mind, can we just go across, and for my benefit, let me know where they are. I already know one from Nepal, and I'm going to suggest he visit the website for the World Health Organization. But if we've got other Ontario representatives here, I'm going to tell you where to look.
Sure.
And I
you know
see
what?
my friend from the city of Brantford.
I'll let, let's just go. So we know Aaron, which I think he said was his son's name. So Aaron, if you're there, maybe in the chat, you can drop your actual first name. But Aaron is joining us from Nepal.
Nepal, yeah.
Lucy is in Brantford. Saul, where are you located?
Markham and Stouffville and York region in general.
Okay. We've
Okay,
got,
so-
I'm also located in Brantford. Patty, whereabouts are you? We'll unmute you.
I'm located in Brantford as well.
Okay, yeah. And Chris?
There's this. Your sound's gone, Chris.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, you had your mic.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm from Brantford as well. Actually, work closely with Lucy, so it's good to see everyone.
Great, great. And Kate?
Hi, I'm from Peel Dufferin region, and actually here in Orangeville right now.
Can I comment, Linda?
Yeah.
For Kate Tremblay, Peel region has just developed an age-friendly council on aging.
Amazing.
And so you go on to Google Peel Council on Aging, and you're going to find they're just brand new coming into it. Brantford, you know, Markham, Stouffville, there's so many around your area, and there are your municipalities are coming to the Southern Ontario Age Friendly Network. So Age Friendly is alive and active in your municipalities, in your area.
That's great.
That's what I want to do is tell you that there's some place for you to go to get information on what's happening with your municipalities. Chris is my contact with the city of Brantford, and I'm so proud of what the city of Brantford has done that I could praise them up and down forever. Okay, so that's where I think I've covered everybody so far. We're up to whoever you're.
Tracy and
Yes. And I'm some Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, and Linda and I are both on the board of directors for that organization. So that's how I got to know Linda.
Excellent, excellent. Okay.
and Tracy's physically located in Scarborough. Even
Another one in the Toronto area.
the,
We're alive and well with age-friendly champions in that area. Now you two have to join them.
yes. And for anyone that's interested, so the Board of Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, we meet virtually, but we are literally located all across the province from Thunder Bay to Niagara.
And there are opportunities for every one of your locations with your organization to partner as you and I do in this community, be aware of what's going on. Thunder Bay is another one that's very active with age friendly.
Yeah, next we've got Wayne, and Wayne, I don't have your last name on the screen. And if you can unmute and let us know where you're from, Wayne.
Maybe he went to do and get a drink.
Yeah, well, I told everybody.
Okay.
We're admitting some people that are coming in for the advocacy session.
Okay. And I'm going to have to leave it to.
Where are we here? Oh, so Kate.
Or Kate.
Kate, where are you located? Kate said she, believe it or not, she was being interviewed by the Globe and Mail.
Okay, we got Nicole and Tracy that I don't know where they're from, that were part of that. Oh, there's Wayne, Wayne's back.
Yeah, I just saw, sorry, I didn't see that it said to unmute, but I'm Wayne and I'm up in Kenora, Ontario, in Kenora. So I had Pat Seated actually pass this info on for me and I thought I would attend, and that your presentation was great, Lucy. I found that wonderful. Your breath of fresh air.
Well, you have
I wish we had someone like you up here, because I mean, we have all the same issues going on here, right? but being such a smaller place, I mean, I got hurt way back in 1987, and I lived in Winnipeg for a number of years while I went back to school and got a degree, and I worked up there for a while, but I ended up coming home to Kenora, and it's not without its difficulties, I mean, I come from Winnipeg where it was 85 or 90% accessible, where Kenora is 30% accessible. So it's a tough go, and trying to get people to get accessibility even when in their renos and that, it's difficult. I'm constantly advocating for change here.
Well, that's great. Thanks for joining us.
All of us are. Thank you, Wayne. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Good. Linda.
Nicole, do you want to jump on and tell us where you're from?
I'm in rural center Hastings, Ontario.
Hastings, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now there's another area. All of the locations you've all talked about, those municipalities are all doing something with age friendly. So you need to check out your own municipality as well.
Okay, and so who have we not? Oh, Niko. Was going to share where he's from.
He wasn't with that. I don't think he was there. Were you there, Niko, when I did the presentation on age friendly?
No, I just finished my work at my crossing job, so I just got home not long ago to get set up.
Tracy was though. Tracy was, Linda.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm Niko Pupella. I'm dialing in from Uxbridge, Ontario, which was hit very hard from that tornado that happened.
Yes, I was on a meeting on Sunday with Niko. He's staying at a friend's house because his apartment building was damaged in the tornado. So we are very appreciative of
That's why my background's blurred. I've got blinds and I've adjusted it as best I can. So
yes, so thank you for joining us. And Pat is in Pat's in Thunder Bay, Pat Seed. So welcome, Pat.
I'm in. Thank you very much, Linda. And I had difficult computer problems that I couldn't solve. So I wanted to be here at 1, but I'm here now.
No, welcome. Thank you for coming. I think that covered everybody.
Tracy, what did Tracy was?
Oh, Tracy. Yeah, Tracy. Yeah, we did. Tracy's in Scarborough, but she's the president of Citizens with Disabilities Ontario.
Well,
so.
All those Ontario municipalities that you've mentioned, every one of them have something that they're doing on age friendly in their municipalities. They may not be as far along as Brantford is, but they all are doing something. And that has changed since 2010. And some of them are brand new to it. Others are really active on different things. So check out your own municipality.
Yes, and keeping in mind, as I said, age friendly. In my world, age friendly and accessible are interchangeable. So
right.
I do a lot of work around the AODA, which became law in 2005 with the goal for a fully accessible Ontario by 2025. So we have now less than 3 years to go, and we have a lot of work still to be done for that to happen. So we are, like I said, we all have a little bit of civil disobedience. And Patty was sharing with me the other day that her father was instrumental in having, and Lucy, anybody from Brantford will know that North Park Collegiate, but her father was instrumental in getting an elevator put into the high school when Patty was in high school. So that's what Patty's went to high school, the same high school as my husband. So they were having a discussion around how, civil disobedience. Her father was advocating for accessibility in her high school back when she was in high school. So that's the, if we don't advocate and we don't speak up and we don't all have a little civil disobedience in us, nothing will get changed. So I certainly
have to find your champions, right, Linda? You have to find the champions in the community, because who votes? The residents are the ones that vote.
Yes.
What's the closest organization that might do something to respond to what we're doing? The municipalities.
Yes.
And of course, they have the weight of their association in the province. So
yeah, and I will, everybody, from whatever municipality you're coming from. Every municipality in the province of Ontario that has a population of at least 20,000 people will also have an accessibility advisory committee. So if you have issues in your community that you would like to see raised at a municipal level, then reach out on your municipal government's website. Doesn't necessarily mean that you will have we are very lucky in Brantford to have an accessibility coordinator on staff, and quite a number of larger municipalities do. But smaller municipalities, you can reach out to your local accessibility advisory committee, and that's another way to get your message heard by your local municipal government, because those advisory committees report directly to municipal council. So I was chair of our local accessibility advisory committee for about 6 years, quite a few years ago. So yes, that's another way to get your word across. So we've got about 5 minutes. It's just what, 5 minutes to 2, but our speakers for the advocacy session are all here. And so I think we're going to move into the advocacy session. And what I would really like to do after the advocacy session is over is really move into some real discussion about issues and things that we need to advocate for, issues that persons with disabilities, when Lucy talks about lived experience, what those issues are. And as I said, we are really using today's summit to formulate what the sessions for our Accessibility Expo in September are going to be addressing. So we really value the input of everyone that's joined us today, and again, thank you for your time. So that being said, Tracy, if you are ready to go, then we're going to start with Tracy. Just let me find Tracy's. So Tracy Odell is the president of Citizens with Disabilities Ontario and the second vice president of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities. Tracy has a master's degree in critical disability studies. She was born with SMA type 2, and Tracy grew up in an institution. This experience galvanized her desire to live in the community and make it possible for others to do the same. Tracy is credited with starting Nurturing Assistance, which enables parents with disabilities to be involved, loving, and capable parents to their young children. Using Nurturing Assistance, Tracy raised 2 daughters with her husband while working full-time and volunteering on boards to provide attendance services and raise awareness of issues relating to disability. I myself have known Tracy for a number of years, and I am pleased to welcome Tracy to our summit to kick off our advocacy session. So Tracy, go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the invitation to do this. It's always a very busy week, being Access Awareness Week, and it's good to have chances to get together over different things. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes talking about different styles of advocacy that I have used over the years. I do have a little bit of trouble speaking, so if you want me to repeat anything I've said, please feel free to ask me. It doesn't bother me, doesn't hurt my feelings, like it's okay. I'd rather that you understood. So I've been involved with advocacy all of my life, and it seemed that the type of advocacy seemed to mold itself in a different way for each of the different things. And I'll just highlight some of the big ones. So the first was getting myself out of the institution. I went when I was 7 years old, and it was just for kids with physical disabilities. And at 18, signed myself out to be able to live in the community. And that was just because I was fortunate to be turning 18 at a time when there were various demonstration projects happening around the province where you could live in the community in an apartment shared with another person, and attendants would be available to assist with all the activities of daily living. Not quite around the clock at first, but without that help, I was going to be sent to live in a nursing home for seniors. And when you're 18 and you want to go to a Janis Joplin concert or something like that, you know, the thought of being in a senior's home, you know, at that age was just like the last thing. So I was very lucky to do that. And so on that one, I kind of rode on the coattails of things that other people were doing. Like I had an opportunity to give my ideas as to what I thought living in the community would look like. And my friend, who is the same age as I, we were about 17, we had a thing that described it. And the parents were angry with us. They said, like, we want you to be serious. And what we described was, you know, having our own apartment, attendants would come and go as we needed them. They could be friends if you wanted to, but it was, you know, that wasn't important. And they didn't have to keep a chart and write down things that they did. Like it was like not a hospital environment. So that was my first thing. And then with the same organization, it was run by a board of directors who were not themselves people with lived experience of disabilities, right? Like they worked in the phys biz, but they were not themselves people that needed these services. So over time, this is a whole other story, but over time, the services started to deteriorate. And we ended up getting the Ministry of Community and Social Services to come and meet with us. They were funding the organization at the time. And we said, like, here's what's happening, you know, with your dollars. It's supposed to be for helping us live independently. And instead, you know, people are not showing up for bookings, as we would call it. People weren't getting the services that they were supposed to be able to get and weren't able to get. And as a result of that, there was kind of like a revolution. The people on the board were very upset and insulted that we were criticizing their management of the organization. And especially since they were volunteers on the board, you know, so where were we coming from, you know, being critical of that? If we thought we could do better, then, you know, go right ahead. And so we turned to the ministry person who was there at the time and said, it seems like there's a lot of openings on the board suddenly, because people got offended and they resigned. And so we made a deal that a number of the consumers, as we called ourselves, a number of the consumers were on the board. So it became a kind of a hybrid. And that was like a long process getting it done. And that's another thing altogether. So I call that the Morrison takeover. Another thing that happened before I left Morrison was I had met my husband and we were expecting a baby. And so when our baby was born, my husband was, you know, almost like a single parent, because I wasn't able to assist. My ability to move my arms and so on was limited and still is. And I didn't realize, like, you know, like how left out I would feel, you know, because I couldn't just jump in and grab the baby when she was crying, or, you know, just jump in and play with her when I wanted to. If she was happily laying somewhere where I could maybe interact with her, my husband was too tired to help me to do that. Like he needed to have a rest because he was on like duty, you know, 24/7 kind of thing, as you are with a newborn. So I came up with the idea that I needed someone to help me look after the baby, to do things the way I want to do. And in fact, the very first big fight my husband and I had was whether or not our daughter would be wearing socks. You know, she was like about 2 months old, and it was middle of the summer, and it was like really hot. And my husband, like, you know, didn't want her to wear socks. He thought she'd be uncomfortable and should kick them off anyways. And I wanted her to look cute because I wanted the socks to go with the dress. And that's anyways, it was the first big fight that we ever had. And that was kind of where I came up with this idea of having a nurturing assistant. And so through the connections that we made at the Ministry of Community and Social Services, who were providing the funds for our attendance services, I made up a proposal explaining what this service would be. Because at first they thought I was talking about babysitting, and it's like, no, it's not babysitting, because I'm there and I'm giving the same direction as I would if they're helping me to get dressed, kind of thing. So they agreed that that would be something that would be within the scope of services. So they didn't really make a new policy or a new rule. We didn't have to go to court. We didn't have to, you know, do anything like that. But we were able to use some of that service dollars for that purpose. And the staff would be separate and apart from the other attendants, because didn't want to make it a situation where a person needed help, say, to go to the bathroom, and the attendant was busy with the baby, and, you know, like, help me with the baby. And, you know, so we just thought we'd be able to have totally different folks hired to help with the baby. And that worked out really well. And it was, I proposed that it would phase down over time. So as my child was more physically independent, then I could interact more on a verbal basis than on a physical basis. So we were able to get that in place. And that was something like I thought of because I needed it, but it became entrenched in Ontario with people who needed attendance services. So if a person has, say, direct funding, or they're in a support service living unit, say with March of Dimes or something like that, then the funding can be there to assist people to look after their children. And then that turned into being, you know, the fathers as well as the mothers, which is great, because a lot of fathers with disabilities want to be active with their children as well, right? So it just helped with making the connection and being able to play with your own child and having a bit of a bond with them and so on. So that was something that's happened without like a major policy change. Then I was involved with direct funding, which is how we ended up with having funding as a self-manager to provide with attendance at home. And that involved kind of like a coalition of people coming together, much like the Accessible Housing Network. It was kind of like that kind of grouping of people coming together who wanted to see direct funding happen as an alternative for the other types of services that were in the community. And then like over time, I see, you know, what has been described as like a swarm of bees approach to advocacy, that you see lots of people doing their little piece of it, you know, making their stings with their stingers and drawing attention. And so sometimes things like that could happen. And, you know, the parents of children who are on the autism spectrum were very successful with advocacy at the beginning of the Ford government when he came in, and it was the funding arrangement was going to be changed in such a way that the level of service that could be provided with children would be far, far less, and would end, you know, like at a certain time, even though autism is a condition that you have for your life, right? So I think like just today, like it's all about, I think, protecting the gains that we have won over time. And then also carving out the near turf, like with housing, like this is amazing that it's hit the political agenda. We're seeing articles about it in the paper all the time. So housing has become a really, really big issue, and other disability issues as well, I think are great. But we have to protect what we have won. So like attendance services that we have won, accessible transportation, we're seeing that getting eroded and pulled back, and cut back as to what was being available. And so I think we need to do that. And Citizens with Disabilities Ontario organization, we dive in on issues that are decided at the provincial level. Like at the other session, it was said that the municipal level is the best level to deal with certain issues, which is absolutely true. And the provincial level is the best level to deal with other issues. So we work on that. We have started up action groups, which form because we have, a couple of people who want to work on something and work on a change for something. And we will support the, getting a action group up and going, and then whatever people want to do to make that action happen, whether it is climbing the stairs of the legislature or, making our own convoy and blocking off a road with, 5 or 10 people in their mobility devices, whatever we choose to do. That action group can come up with ideas and bring it to the board. And if, we agree to it, then, we're off and running. So that's very exciting. And I think that's going to allow us to make some really concrete progress. If you are not a member of Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, membership is free. And, we'd love to have you join, because we're very interested in people who are themselves people with disabilities, who are residents of Ontario, and also allies of our organization, who can assist us with different issues that we are involved in. So very, very happy to have you join on. In any material that goes out afterwards, we'll make sure you know how to let us know that you'd like to apply for a membership. And we're just gone through our annual meeting, and we're getting reorganized as again after that. So I think it'll be a year where we can do lots of good things. I'm just going to stop there and turn it over to Niko and Nicole.
Thank you, Tracy. And I will say, as a board member of Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, I certainly will make sure that the organization's information is shared in the email that goes out. So to wrap up, kind of speaking on our advocacy session, we are pleased to have 2 members of the Council of Community Living Ontario. And the council consists of 12 self-advocates from across the province that work alongside the board of directors to find solutions and share information, opinions, knowledge, and experience on important issues such as poverty, safe and affordable housing, human rights, and barriers to quality healthcare. Quality healthcare. First we have Niko Pupella, and Niko is the president of the Council of Community Living Ontario. He is from Uxbridge, Ontario. He's beginning his 4th year on the council. He is a member of Community Living Durham North, self-advocate group, the A-Team. Okay, I'm not sure about that.
Yep, you got that right.
Yeah, the A-Team, that's good. He's part of the Rights Review Board Committee at Community Living Durham North. as he feels strongly about fighting for the rights of people who have a disability. Niko is also a member of the Community Living Ontario Finance Committee. He's very savvy with computers and technology and enjoys learning it as it continuously evolves. He hopes to continue working with the council to ensure the voices of people who have a disability are heard regarding issues with ODSP, fair rent, work wages, and the many issues related to poverty. We also have Nicole Flynn. Nicole is the vice president of the council and is from the rural area of Madoc, Ontario. She has been on the council since 2018. She is a graduate of the Loyalist College General Arts and Science Diploma Program. Nicole considers herself a lifelong learner and has the goal of obtaining a university degree. Her focus is on human rights, diversity, and inclusive communities. Nicole believes in freedom, power, and prosperity for everyone. And to do this, she realizes the significance of the need for equity. Nicole feels that for everyone to be included in society, conversations has to occur. She emphasizes the importance of recruiting self-advocates to increase our voice to be heard and seen as person. Nicole's dream is to explore the world to gain knowledge and experience. So I'm going to turn it over to Niko and Nicole to do their presentation. And then we are going to move into a group discussion on advocacy issues. So Niko and Nicole, I'll turn it over to you when you've worked out your presentations.
So mine unfortunately wasn't planned out on paper just because I was dealing with a bit of a heat stroke yesterday from that crazy heat storm we had. So I mean, mine is more or less going to be on advocacy, what it's like to be an advocate and being a voice of change. So when you hear the word advocate, what does it mean to you? I'll let you think about that for a minute. Don't have to respond. But to me, an advocate is someone who's there to provide a voice for others, help those who are voiceless and need change to happen. I've been involved on numerous committees as well as the council, being the voice to help others, making sure that their voice is being heard on serious issues. ODSP, having a fair wage for work, fair rent. As we all know, rent is such a huge problem these days. Costs have been going up and it's hard to be able to afford a living to live where you want to. But advocating for change is so important because if you're not listening to the issues that are happening and fighting for those issues, they're not going to change. We had the privilege of being able to meet with the minister on some of these issues to let her know that like we have these issues and we want to see change happen, and we get change takes time. That's fine, but we want to make sure that those issues are being brought forward and that the government's listening. Because if we don't have a voice, then nothing's going to happen and change. But advocacy is so huge, and it can be small, it can be big. Like I've been part of the A team, which is our local organization in Port Perry, Uxbridge. With the A team, we deal with smaller issues, but again, advocating, putting ourselves out there, engaging with the public, letting them know that like if you have issues, you want to see things change, speak up. Because if you don't speak up, nothing's going to happen. I'm reminded of well, it's actually a tag message that I say to people, and it's in my email message, and it's been part of a movement I helped start back a few years ago during the pandemic. I call it, well, it's been called the hashtag one thing. I'll share the message with you guys, and then I'll turn it over to Nicole afterward. But it's a message I share with anyone and everyone. You to remember to reach out and help someone, because if you help just one person, they can pass that along and help someone else. Check in on a friend, check in on a family member, anyone, make sure they're doing okay. The more you reach out and help someone, like I said, doesn't have to be big or small. You want to make sure you're being kind to each other, help someone else who might need help. because you never know when you might need to be the one needing help from someone else. Remember, you are not in this world alone, so let's stop acting like it. Advocate for change. If you want to see things happen, speak up. Because if you don't, again, I know I'm repetitive, but you want to make sure change is happening, be the voice. Speak up. Nicole, I will now turn it over to you. And I apologize if there's any noise you might hear later on. There's a guy working next door in my friend's building, so hopefully it won't impact things too much. Nicole, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Niko. Hi, my name is Nicole Flynn. I am my home is in the rural area of St. Hastings. I am the Vice President of the Council of Community Living Ontario. I am here to tell you about the council and some of the things that we are doing. Okay, let's get into it. The Council of Community Living Ontario is composed of 12 elected self-advocates from 5 districts in Ontario. We have been meeting virtually once a month. We actively engage in discussions about issues that affect our lives. Council members offer suggestions, opinions, knowledge, experience, and ideas. And we work together to find solutions. For example, recently we met with the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, Marie Fullerton. We asked questions to find out what the current government is willing to change to improve our lives. We also made her aware of the ongoing challenges that we are facing. We also made her, we impressed upon Minister Fullerton that time for change is now. And I emphasize now. Together, we have also composed letters to express our support or opposition of ideas and plans. Council members participate on various committees that deal with issues that are important to self-advocates. For example, many of us are involved with the Freedom from Harm Committee, which advocates against housing people who have an intellectual disability in long-term care institutions. Council has recently written their first position statement. This document states the Council is against housing of people who have an intellectual disability in long-term care institutions. This position statement contains the perspectives of council members and will be used as a reference by advocates and ally organizations and officials. Partnerships have been created between council and organizations such as Seniors for Social Action Ontario, because we see the similarities in how we are treated. We are also expanding diversity in the council to make sure everyone is heard. Members of council bring the issues discussed back to their home communities to educate the self-advocates in their local advocacy groups. This helps to spread the actions and multiply changes throughout the province. Webinars like this one are a new platform where self-advocates across the province get to share their thoughts, like what we are doing now, and challenges. This helps council understand their priorities. Council has been applying Dr. Cindy Blackstock's approach of mosquito advocacy to their priorities, swarming together as mosquitoes. continually stinging the government. We are creating an itch and we're advocating until the 22% of the population, and I quote by Tracy Odell. Sorry, I should say that in the beginning. Until 22% of the population that are being ignored by political parties have right, freedom, power, and prosperity. Our voices continue to multiply, and we are aware that every voice counts. Thank you.
One thing forgot to mention out of mine is that I'm also involved with our autism services in Durham and Toronto. As I was diagnosed with autism, I think when I was 18, living in a group home. So it was different. Like at that point, like I'd heard of it, but didn't know anything about what it was. So then when I was a little bit older, I got involved with our Carrie's Place Autism Services. And I've been part of their peer group, as well as their autism advisory committee. So helping educate others and parents when they're having issues of their own when it comes to their kids, and like if they need any tips, tricks, because who better to learn from those that actually have it. So it's another way of being a voice to others as well. And like Nicole said, to kind of put a little sting on that conversation, is that like we want to make sure voices are heard. We want to make sure that like we fight for issues that are important. Reaching out to government, other groups to spread the word, to make sure that we're getting those issues dealt with, because we want to see change. We want to take a bite out of the government and let them know, hey, we're not going anywhere. We're fighting for issues. We need to see change.
Now.
Good point, Nicole. Thank you very much. So thank you to Niko and Nicole for joining us and giving us their perspective on advocacy. What I was hoping to do now was kind of open the floor up. What I'm really interested in hearing about are what issues from an advocacy perspective people would like to see covered in our Accessibility Expo that's happening in September. So we really are taking a lot of the feedback that we're getting from today's session and incorporating that into what breakout sessions that we want to cover during that Accessibility Expo. So I will tell you that we do already have sessions around housing. We have an entire panel discussion that's going to be around employment. Transportation is another issue. I myself spent 10 years as the chair of our local, at the time, not-for-profit accessible transit service, which was then taken on by the municipality. And so I myself am a little bit of a long-term advocate for accessible transportation, because I think I coined the term, it's all about getting there. So when I talk about there, I talk about transportation, housing, education, recreation, and employment. So if you can't get to any of those places, usually the missing link is transportation. And so we will definitely have a session on transportation, a session on recreation, and a session on education. So I'm taking what we've heard today, and I think it's pretty clear that people would certainly be interested in another session on advocacy, because everything that we've talked about today has that advocacy component to it, which is certainly something that we want to cover in that. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Please feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. Niko's got his hand up. So Niko, go ahead.
And I've got a comment after that.
So when you talk about the transportation, there's also the barrier component too, because there's places when you want to go somewhere that aren't accessible. And as someone that sat on an accessibility committee in my local town for a number of years, and also chaired it, is that like we want to see barrier-free access to a lot of places, and because of the AODA Act, a lot of businesses by 2025 are supposed to be barrier-free and have their accessible issues fixed. But not every business has that, the ability of doing that, because if it's say a two-story business, like it makes it more of a challenge. But I've also taken part in a barrier-free day with our township, where we invited the public to volunteer and see what it's like in the different aspects of having a disability or an accessible issue, whether you're blind, deaf, in a wheelchair, on crutches. And it really opens up the eyes of businesses and makes them understand the challenges people are facing. And a lot of businesses in our town have actually become very adaptive to some of those issues and have put in place ways that'll actually work with those people when they want to go to their business. But one business in particular that I'm part of is a bowling league. We're on a two-story thing above a garage. So for them, the building, because of its age, will become a problem for accessibility, because they want to try and put in an elevator, but will the building itself be structurally able to handle that? So like some places have a structural issue when it comes to getting rid of that accessible barrier to make it more accessible. And then when you talk about transportation, it's having those ways where people can get around. And some places are not very accommodating when you're trying to get around. So making sure that you speak up to make sure that they can try and do something about it is important.
Yeah, so for I can certainly speak to transportation from my perspective. I personally, I still drive a wheelchair van. So, but what we're hearing is that from the standpoint of municipalities, there doesn't seem who are responsible for local transportation within your municipality, but there's no appetite at the municipal level. It's certainly in our community, and from what I've heard, I belong to the community transportation network as well, to increase accessible transportation. So that becomes an issue. The other issue is that most transportation service providers will say that their vehicles are accessible, so there's a ramp and you can get on the bus, but there are quite a large percentage of bus stops that are not accessible. So that's great if you can get on the bus, but if you can't get to the bus stop to get on the bus, now that's not accessible transportation. So there's lots of challenges around transportation. And the other issue that a lot of people have is just capacity. So finding accessible transportation, depending on where you need to go. So using the municipal transit service is one thing, but what if you need to go out of town and you're only, in the case of a mobility disability, you've got to go see a specialist out of town, and your only option at that point is to try and hire a wheelchair accessible taxi that's going to cost you a couple $100 each way. So transportation is just such a very, very broad issue from an accessibility perspective. And I will speak to Citizens with Disabilities Ontario. We do have an action group on transportation, because transportation capacity has a lot to do with where you live. So if you live in Toronto, for example, your access to accessible transportation is going to be a lot different than if you live in 10 minutes outside of Brantford is the little town of Paris. And, so your access to transportation, unfortunately, is not equitable across the province. It has a lot to do with geographically where you live and what that access to is like. Tracy's got her hand up, so.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I think there's quite an age difference between me and Niko. And when Niko said something about it's going to take time to get, whatever that service is, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like transportation in Toronto. I was working since I was 12 years old with a volunteer group that was wanting to get wheelchair accessible transportation in the city. And they said, well, it won't happen overnight. I was 12 and now I'm 62. So, they've had a long time. Like I don't really cry real tears when they talk about, that they can't do this in a hurry. Like I'm in catch-up mode now. Like I never thought I didn't think it would take longer than my lifetime for some of these things to happen, but I wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, the AODA is a perfect example that we thought in 2005 when they brought it in. And at the time I was executive director of the MS Society of Canada, and we had big celebrations that the province of Ontario was going to be fully accessible for persons with disabilities by 2025. And, here we are thinking that 20 years was lots of time for that stuff to happen. And I agree with Tracy. Here we are. We are now 2.5 years from the 2025 deadline, and we're nowhere remotely close to where we're going to be. And I'm crowding in on 57, and I'm thinking the same thing. A lot of this stuff is not going to happen in my lifetime, and that should just not be the case. That should not be the case. Lucy, you've got your hand up, and then Nicole.
Well, I'm going to talk about advocacy. I am 83, and when I went into the workplace at 17, the opportunity for women was to be a teacher, a clerk, work in the factory, or if you did have a family that could afford you to go to university, you could be a teacher. And it's taken all these years to have all the kinds of systemic change that has happened for women. Then I look at when I went into the workplace back then in 1957, there wasn't anybody with physical abilities working around me because nothing was accessible. It wasn't even known. It wasn't publicized. And like Tracy, a lot of people ended up living in some sort of institution to develop their lives. And look what it is today. We live, all of us, in communities that were built 100 years ago. Nobody ever thought there'd be wheelchairs and people walking around with walkers and all those types of things that happen today. So when I think about advocacy, I think about you age-friendly champions that I've made you all today need to encourage everybody to speak up. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples because yes, it is the municipalities that can do something about infrastructure, but the businesses that we use or go to can too. So I am aware of a situation where a local bank had a step in front of their building to enter. It didn't have a yellow tape on it. And a lady who had a balance problem didn't see it, and she stepped up and down she went. She broke her leg. She then went to the bank and she sued them. And did the bank fix it and put a yellow stamp there? Yeah, step there. Yes, they did. Well, another lady became aware of that situation, so she went to her bank and she spoke up and said, "I have a friend." And you know what? That bank put a yellow strip in several places around the entrance to their place. I tried it out. Once I heard that, I thought, I'm going to try that. So my sister and I used to go to the movies once, this is before COVID, and I have a severe balance problem. And I was having difficulty getting up the steps to get to where she wanted to sit. Well, it was all in darkness. So I went and I wrote a letter to the theater and said, do you know, for somebody that has a problem with mobility, whether it be eyesight or whether it be somebody like me, or and I'd see people come in with their canes or their wheelchairs, you haven't really thought about how they can access the seats. So there are people that aren't coming. They're not spending money. Well, you know what? That theater changed it. The lights are on until the show starts. The ads are still running, but the lights are on until the show starts. And there is a place now to put walkers and canes or whatever, if they don't want to take them to their seat. And they have made it so that there is seating. So that was business being spoken up to by people that were being age friendly, but they were talking about the mobility that people just don't think about, because people that have never had experience with a mobility problem, whether it be a loved one or themselves, how can they think about what something is that they don't even have the experience in? And that's the voice of lived experience. And all of you have that lived experience. And that's why I made you all age-friendly champions today, because you just keep speaking up. It might take 50 years, as Tracy knows and I know, but if we create something for the future of those that are coming behind us, we're doing the thing that's right. And take pride in it. Just speak up. And that's where you use the go, slow go, no go opportunity. That's my 2 cents worth, Linda.
Thank you, Lucy. Yes, I agree. My real passion is getting businesses to understand that accessibility is good for business, but with the AODA, it's also the law. Although, you know, I sometimes have a hard time explaining to them that it's going to improve, and that's really what we, as Lucy just said, what you really need to do when you're advocating to businesses is really showing them that their business bottom line improves as they're accessible. So that's why we're running the webinar series this year on accessibility is good for business, trying to get the word out that that, you know, that, and the other, you know, as I said, we're loyal. So if you are accessible, you're getting, you know, in my case, you're getting my business. If you're not accessible, you're not, but you're not getting my family's business, my friend's business, or anything else, because I come with all my other people. So, so yeah, that's a word to get across. Nicole, you've got your hand up, so I'll let you go.
For the camera. Sorry about that. Okay. So when we were with Minister Fullerton, like me and Niko and Judy, okay, we were there and we were talking with Minister Fullerton. That's when she kept saying, change takes time. We've been waiting for centuries. We can't take this for an answer. We need to work together to strengthen our voice. We have to take action and keep telling the minister what needs to change now. Thank you.
Well said, Nicole. Yes, I agree. We've been working on this for centuries.
You know, and there was another thing that was brought up in our meeting with the minister, and it was a kind of an added question that we weren't originally going to bring up. But as people know, when you turn a certain age and you're on disability, it changes over to the old age thing. And we didn't know this, and apparently it's been in place for years that it was always that set age. And it confused actually her, because she didn't realize that it was like always been that. It's always been like that for many years. And we mentioned to her that, like, well, maybe it's time that gets looked at, because I mean, people that are on disability, they're getting, I believe they're getting less when they're on ODSP than they get when they're on OAAS, or however they put, or is it less, Lucy?
Other way around.
Okay,
Less
see,
on
that's where I
OAS.
couldn't remember. But see, again, like, how are people to afford living on such a small amount, even when you go from that age change? And it's just like, it's frustrating. And it's just like nobody's been aware that that's been in place for so many years. Maybe it's time to take a look at that. And that kind of sparked her attention on that when it was brought up. Because Nicole said, like, Judy is one of the people that she's disabled. She's in a wheelchair, but she's almost at that age where, or she'll get to the age where she's going to switch over, and she's got friends that are switching over from ODSP to OAS, and they're losing money. And it's just, how is that right?
Yeah, which speaks
Well,
to the-
money and benefits, right?
I think Nicole's mom was going to jump on and say something.
No, that exact thing, money and benefits, that exact thing.
Yeah, great minds think alike.
Yeah, so that's the other thing I'm hearing is and that's one of the priorities of Citizens with Disabilities Ontario is also around income support and income security for persons with disabilities. And you're speaking of persons that are going from ODSP to OAS. And then I have people that I've talked to on the other end of the spectrum that have the trigger when they turn 18, they lose all of the supports and services that they have as being a child. And I've heard it referred to as hitting the brick wall. They turn 18, then all of a sudden that stuff goes away, and then they have to navigate the adult system of supports and services for persons with disabilities. So yeah, we'll certainly take that into consideration when we're looking at our topics. Lucy, you had your hand up, and then
Well, just part of the problem is that the ODSP, any of those benefit and support programs are provincial, and the OAS is federal. And so there is just, it's the same thing happens when you talk about housing or healthcare. The federal doesn't have anything to do with that. They give the dollars to the provinces and they're to manage it. So I don't know, other than organizations standing up and speaking to these issues any other way. And that's why it takes so long. She's right. That's why it takes so long. Is it a long time? You compound that with the whoever's in power at the moment in the office at whatever, they change all the time, and governments change. And you can go along and have some good things happening, which that happened in Ontario. We had some good things happening that helped vulnerable people. And that was underneath the Liberals. And then the government changed and the Conservatives came into power and they cut them. But that didn't have anything to do with the federal, which impacts people based on age when you, for as far as the ODSP is concerned and OAS. So just the only point I wanted to make is those dollars that are supposedly to help us are coming from different sources.
yes. Kate?
So for me, like I work with Spinal Cord Injury Ontario, and I have a client right now that at 65 had her spinal cord injury, has no long-term disability with her work. The injury was done at home, and she's not going to have benefits when she retires from her job. And she's not eligible for ODSP because she was 65 when her injury happened. So what happens for this individual?
Well, and that's, we again, we're talking about that age thing. So, I mean, most people on long-term disability, even if you had long-term disability, it ends at 65. But then, the entire, so now we're talking federal dollars around the CPP disability benefit. When you turn 65, it changes into something else, and then they reduce. So all of a sudden you turn 65 and you need less money to live because that's the way the the federal government looks at that program. And so for that to happen to her right at the age of 65, she's really caught in a, you know, between a rock and a hard place, because yeah, like CPP disability at it, even if you're on it, ends at age 65, and then transitions to basically, I think and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you just basically go right into the old age. So the CP, just the Canada pension. So you get your Canada pension, and at 65 you get your old age, but that's not at the same level of income that you had if you were on CPP disability under the age of 65. Yeah, so it's again that, well, why does, as a person with a disability, like my disability is a chronic condition. I'm not going to change. I mean, if I make it to age 65, I'm not going to be any better. If anything, I'm going to be worse. So yes, there begs that whole question from an advocacy perspective. Why does that, you know, why does our age have an impact on that? Lucy's got her hand up again.
Well, it does, because the plan was put together when people didn't live as long as we do.
Yes.
And it's never changed. The only thing that ever changes is a little bit of dollars. So first of all, every Canadian in Canada, when they get 65, they get the old age security, OAS. Depending on their income, they might be eligible for income supplement to that. That's income based. If they worked, it depends what they paid into Canada pension plan. If they got injured on the job and have the benefit, the disability benefit, when they turn 65, it will go to whatever that was that they paid into for the Canada pension plan, if they had it, if they did it. We hear the Council on Aging, we older people out there, what I'm hearing all the time is the number of people just based on age alone that are impacted on the cost of daily living. Then if you take those people that do have a mobility issue, and they're having some other type of funding coming in and it's cut off, they are literally going into the living poor because of the cost of living as it is today. So CARP, which is the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, they do have a lobbying group that is lobbying for all things that happen to people when they hit 65. It doesn't matter whether they have a mobility issue or not. So whether they're ever going to be successful, I don't know. But they've been, well, they will eventually, because I'm going to think positive. But that lobbying has been going on for some time, and it is still going on. And they were out again with their 5 points and things that they were talking to the people that are running in the province at this point. So we're all connected. Everything that we're all doing, it all interrelates to each other. And then if we look at the society as a whole, there are pockets that when you turn 65, it gets worse as far as your ability to financially survive in our society.
Yes, that's for sure. And, you know, I don't know of anyone, as Kate said, to suffer a spinal cord injury at the age of 65. Now, that person is literally being just lumped into, as Lucy said, the living poor, because of your age. And as I said, at my age, I'm quite sure my disability isn't going to be any better at the age of 65. In my case, I don't have any benefits, because the benefits that I had when I was working ended 2 years after I became disabled. So, and if anybody is out there with a chronic disability such as mine, we're virtually uninsurable. So all of those things that you require because you have a disability, now you have to pay for those out of your own pocket. So that's another whole issue. So I'm writing copious notes. I'm glad for this recording, because we're going to get the transcription, but we have room for 9 breakout sessions, and I feel like we could have 29 and still not cover all of the issues. Niko, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so the one thing like I wanted to mention, and we mentioned ODSP a few times, and back prior to Nicole, actually I think it was around the time Nicole started on the council, we had a face-to-face meeting in Richmond Hill, and we were discussing the changes that were coming to ODSP, how they were going to be able to make it easier for people that were working. You wouldn't have to worry about recording your money a certain way as you used to be able to, and we were going to be able to keep more of it. And then all of a sudden the government changes over, and there went that. So then, like, for people like myself that are working and it's on ODSP, it's frustrating when you're like losing some of your money that you're getting from them because of your working. Some people think, oh, well, why should I just have a job if I'm going to get more from ODSP? Doesn't always work that way. But at the same time, it is on a case by case basis. They deal with it for certain things, which I don't think is right. But I'm hoping that things will change down the road, because I met with a member of parliament, or not member of parliament, someone that was running for our local area. And I had a nice chat with her about some of the issues that we were facing on the provincial level. And I was curious to get her input on what they were looking at doing should they be elected. And this was the Ontario party. Lisa, I can't remember her last name. Thank you. I got reminded from my other half. But like they said that they had like some programs laid out that they were going to bring forward to help people that are on disability. And I said, that's great. And I just hope that those will actually be beneficial and actually work, because as we all know, people that are on disability are struggling a lot, especially with work income, having an affordable place to live. It's ridiculous, and especially right now, as we're in the post-pandemic, and also now that some people that are dealing with housing issues because of being displaced from the storm that went through. That's causing a huge problem for people. So it's tough, and I hope that things will change for the better. And as we have said, I know they say things take time, but things need to change sooner as opposed to later if we want to be able to get ahead of things. I wanted to say a special shout out to Sal, because I work with him on the community living. It's good to see another familiar face on this call. So good seeing you, Sal.
Okay, so Lucy has had to leave. She has another Zoom at 3, and I'm Nicole. One last question or comment, and then I've just got a few comments to wrap up.
Sorry about that. What part of change don't you understand?
Is that what you want to say?
That's what I want to say to Minister Fulton at that time.
Hi, Linda. I'm Kathy, Nicole's mom. When you are doing the accessibility, when your actual programming, you're talking about education. I'm wondering if the perspective of people who have an intellectual disability will be presented, because there's, just the stigma and the bias against educating people, especially if they have a visible intellectual disability, is so prevalent in the educational system that there's no point in using it, because they're not going to get an education that's going to lead anywhere. Yes. And people who have an intellectual disability are able to be educated. So just making sure that is an included part, that would be great.
Yes, and we'll certainly make sure of that. There are, I have a couple of people that around the education space that will be part of that.
Yeah, and not just the CICE program, the Community Integration for Cooperative Education, because that's become just another place to put people, an appeasement. It's not leading to employment, at least not out here. It's not leading to employment. So the fact that people with an intellectual disability are able to achieve a non-modified program, whatever it is.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for that. So just in terms of next steps, we've certainly had a very robust discussion today, and I thank everyone that did join us. Specific thanks to our speakers, Kate Chung from the Accessible Housing Network, Sarah Collier from Community Living Brant, Lucy Marco from the Grand River Council on Aging, Tracy Odell from Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, and then Niko, Pupella, and Nicole Flynn from the Council of Community Living Ontario.
We were happy to be a part of this, and we're glad that you reached out to have us included on this webinar.
And it's what I'd really like to wrap up with is that this was the precursor conversation to pulling together our Accessibility Expo in September. And so that we really hope that you will share the word of that expo. We are looking for speakers for speaker sessions, and we are taking very much a lot of the conversations that we've had today around where interests lie. We will be sending out, so I've taken a lot of notes about resources and contact information and websites and programs and that kind of thing. So the follow-up email that will be going out to everyone following this session will also have a link to the recording. So if that's something that you feel that you can share with your networks, that they'll get benefit from that as well, then please do so. Is in terms of myself, Accessibility Solutions, you can always reach us. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. We do have a YouTube channel. And in that email that comes out will be my direct contact information, both email and phone. And I am open to speaking to anybody about accessibility issues, at any time. So that's, we are at 2:59. And
Linda, quick question. I don't know whether you had adjusted earlier, but when is your expo in September?
Oh, so it is September 13th to 15th. So it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So the format is we have a opening keynote speaker on the Tuesday morning, and then each afternoon there'll be 3 breakout sessions. The Wednesday morning we have a panel that is will be all around employment, and the Thursday morning the panel discussion is going to primarily be around community supports and services. So a lot of people don't understand what a lot of agencies do. Community Living is a perfect example of an agency that does a lot of different things. Just as you saw from Sarah's presentation earlier today, I work actually quite closely with Community Living Brant on a lot of different projects. So, so we will be doing that. And then we envision kind of our evening sessions to be facilitated discussion by participants from the topics that we've covered. So looking for a pretty robust 3 days. One of the reasons that we decided to do the Accessibility Expo virtually is that we, well, today you can see we have people from all over Ontario, and Aaron, who's not on screen now, but from Nepal, no less. But we, what we've heard from people that we talk to is that if you want to go to something like the Abilities Expo, which I went to 2 weeks ago, at least from an Ontario perspective, you have to drive yourself or get yourself all the way to Toronto to participate in those kind of expos. Whereas this will give an opportunity for people to be involved virtually from wherever they are, and from, quite frankly, the comfort of their own home, or we could have organizations that are that have groups that are participating as a group. So
I wish our council members could attend it, but that actually is the same week as our CLO conference, because ours is the Wednesday for our all-day meetings and it goes until Friday, so the 14th to the 16th.
Oh, okay, well,
So
that's,
it's a funny thing that it's crossing over with yours.
yeah, so maybe we'll, maybe if we're gonna have you involved, we'll look at one of the breakout sessions on the Tuesday.
That would probably work better. I know I'll be commuting probably the later Tuesday, so that'll work fine. If it's in the morning, then I
Okay,
probably can pull that off.
yeah, okay, no, I appreciate that.
But
Any-
as long as you get us the details, and I'm sure some of us can figure it out whether we can join in or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least with it being virtual, Niko, I mean, you guys could do, if it was something that you wanted to do, could do something from a conference room. So, you know, at least with it being virtual, there's more options.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll figure it out and we'll communicate if there's any issues, if we can still do it or not.
Okay. And anyway, I also want to thank everyone for your participation and sharing. And I hope that my email that comes out kind of covers everything that we discussed today. But as I said, it will have my contact information. So if there's something that is not covered in that email and you have a burning desire to get it, I will get the information to you. Just reach out to me. So again, thank you very much for participating, and we will look for an email coming out, and hopefully we'll see you all again in September.
Thank you. And a shout out to you, Niko.
Thanks, Al. Thank you, everybody.
Keep up the good job.
Thanks, Al. Hopefully we'll see you in person in the fall.
Okay.
Thanks, Linda.
Bye-bye.